The damaged alien ship limped through space toward Earth's orbital station. Black smoke poured from its strange curved hull, and pieces of metal floated away into the darkness. Inside the ship, Ambassador Kefver pressed his forearms against the control panel, trying to keep his vessel from falling apart completely. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of the human space station, watching the alien ship approach. He had never seen anything like it before. The ship looked like it was grown rather than built, with smooth surfaces that reminded him of a seashell. But now it was broken and dying. "Sir, they're requesting emergency docking," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the communications desk. "Granted," Morrison replied. "And get Dr. Lisa Carter down to the docking bay. If these aliens are hurt, she need to help them." The alien ship barely made it to the docking port. Steam hissed from its hull as the airlocks connected. Morrison waited with Dr. Carter and Commander Rick Hayes, wondering what kind of aliens would come through that door. The airlock opened with a soft sound. 3 tall beings stepped out, moving carefully on legs that seemed too thin to support their bodies. They had skin like crystal that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Each alien had 4 arms and large eyes that looked tired and frightened. The one in front stepped forward and spoke in perfect English, though his voice sounded like wind chimes in a breeze. "I am Ambassador Kefver of the Zephyrian Confederation. We come seeking help from the humans of Earth." Morrison nodded. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Lisa Carter and Commander Rick Hayes. You're welcome here. Your ship looked badly damaged." Kefver's 4 arms trembled slightly. "Our ship survived an attack. We barely escaped with our lives. Captain Morrison, my people are dying. We need your help." Morrison led the aliens to the station's main meeting room. The humans sat on one side of a long table, while the 3 Zephyrians sat across from them. Kefver placed a small device on the table and pressed it with one of his hands. A picture appeared in the air above the device. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet with silver cities that sparkled in the sunlight. "This was Zephyr Prime, one of our worlds," Kefver said. His voice was full of sadness. 3 months ago, it looked like this. The picture changed. Now the same planet was brown and dead. The cities were gone, replaced by huge holes in the ground. Nothing moved on. The surface. "This is what it looks like now," Kefver continued. "The Vorthix swarm found us." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "What is the Vorthix swarm?" Another alien spoke up. This one was smaller than Kefver and had darker crystal skin. "I am Science Leader Veltar. The Vorthek are insects, but they are as smart as any thinking being. They travel from world to world in great ships made of living tissue. They eat everything." Veltar pressed the device again. New pictures appeared. The humans saw massive ships that looked like they were made of black meat and bone. The ships were covered with teeth and claws and moved through space like swimming. "Creatures. They don't want territory," Veltar explained. "They don't want to rule us. They want to consume us. They eat entire populations and use the bodies to make more of themselves." Commander Hayes studied the images. "How many ships do they have?" "We have seen fleets of 300 or more," Kefver answered. "But we believe there are thousands of them. They have already consumed 3 of our 12 worlds. The rest will fall within months." The 3rd alien, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was even sadder than the others. "I am General Nethara. I commanded the defense of Zephyr Prime. We had 60 ships, all armed with our best weapons. The Vorthik destroyed 58 of them in the first hour of battle." Morrison looked at his fellow humans. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 15 years. They had met many alien species, but most of them were peaceful traders and explorers. This was different. "What kind of help are you asking?" "4?" Morrison asked. Kefver's 4 arms moved nervously. We know humans have a history of warfare. Your species has fought many battles on your own world. We hope you might send some military advisors to help us plan better defenses." "How many advisors?" Commander Hayes asked. "Perhaps 10 or 20 of your military experts," Kethver replied. "And maybe a small fleet of ships to help coordinate our remaining forces. We have studied your technology. Your weapons are different from ours, but they might be effective against the Vorthek." Dr. Carter spoke gently. "What can you offer in return?" "Anything," Kethver said quickly. "Technology, rare materials, territory in our space. We will share everything we have if you can help us survive." The room fell quiet. Morrison looked at the pictures of the dead world floating above the table. He thought about the 3 billion Zephyrians who had lived on that planet and were now gone. "I need to discuss this with my government," Morrison said finally. "Can you wait here while we contact Earth?" "We will wait as long as necessary," Kethver replied. "Time is running short for my people, but we understand you must consider carefully." Morrison stood up. "Dr. Carter will see that you have everything you need: food, medical care, quarters to rest. We'll have an answer for you soon." As the humans left the meeting room, Hayes whispered to Morrison, "Jake, we've never faced anything like this before. These Vorthik sound like a nightmare." "I know," Morrison replied, "but look at those aliens. They're terrified. Their entire civilization is about to be wiped out." Dr. Carter nodded. "The Zephyrians have been peaceful for centuries. They don't know how to fight a war like this." Morrison walked to his office and activated the communication system that would reach Earth. The message would take several minutes to travel across space to the home planet. While he waited, he looked out the window at the damaged Zephyrian ship. 3 hours later, the reply came from Earth. Morrison read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. Then he called Dr. Carter and Commander Hayes to his office. "Well?" Hayes asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "The United Defense Council has made their decision. We're going to help the Zephyrians." "How many advisors are they sending?" Dr. Carter asked. Morrison looked at the message again. "Not advisors. They're sending Admiral Kate Sullivan and the entire combined fleet." Hayes stared at him. "The entire fleet? That's over 100 ships." "The Council's message is clear," Morrison said. "The Vorthek swarm represents a threat to all peaceful species in the galaxy. We're not sending advisors. We're sending everything we have." Dr. Carter shook her head in amazement. "The Zephyrians asked for help with their defenses. They're about to get the full might of humanity's war machine." Morrison nodded. "Let's go tell them the good news. Though I'm not sure they're ready for what they're about to receive." 3 days passed on the human space station. Ambassador Kethver spent most of his time in the quarters Captain Morrison had given him, staring out the small window at the stars. He wondered if his people would still be alive when he returned home. The Vorthek swarm moved fast, and every day meant thousands more Zephyrians could die. Dr. Carter visited him twice each day to check on his health and bring him food that his species could eat. She was kind, but Kethver could see worry in her eyes. The humans were taking a long time to decide, and time was something his people did not have. On the 3rd morning, Lieutenant Rodriguez came to his door. "Ambassador Kethver, Captain Morrison requests your presence in the main conference room. The human leadership wants to speak with you." Kethver felt his forearms shake with nervousness. He had asked for perhaps 20 military advisors and a few ships. If the humans said no, his people would face the swarm alone. If they said yes, there might be hope. He followed Rodriguez through the station's corridors. When they reached the conference room door, she stopped. "Sir, there are more humans in there than before. Don't be nervous. They're here to help." The door opened, and Kethver stepped inside. He expected to see Captain Morrison and maybe a few other humans. Instead, The room was full of people in military uniforms. At the head of the table sat a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her uniform had more medals and badges than any human Kethver had seen. "Ambassador Kethver," Captain Morrison said, standing up. "I'd like you to meet Admiral Kate Sullivan, commander of Earth's combined fleet." The woman stood and walked over to Kethver. She was shorter than the alien but carried herself like someone used to being in charge. "Ambassador, we've studied your situation carefully. The Vorthik swarm is not just a threat to your people. They represent a danger to every peaceful species in this part of the galaxy." Kethver's crystal skin flickered with hope. "Then you will help us? You will send advisors?" Admiral Sullivan looked at the man sitting next to her, a human with dark skin and kind eyes. "This is General Paul Martinez, head of our expeditionary force. Paul, show him what we're sending." General Martinez stood and activated a device similar to the one Kethver had used days before. A three-dimensional image appeared above the table, but this one made Kethver's breath catch in his throat. The image showed ships, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect formations. The ships were dark gray and black, angular and dangerous looking. They bristled with weapons that Kethver didn't recognize. "Task Force Retribution," Admiral Sullivan announced. 4 battle groups, 127 ships total. Kethver stared at the display. His forearms began trembling so hard he had to press them against his body to make them stop. I cannot ask you to risk so many of your people for our cause." "You're not asking," General Martinez said firmly. "We're volunteering. The Vorthik represent exactly the kind of threat that requires complete response. We don't do anything small when lives are at stake." The display changed to show individual ships. The largest one was massive, bigger than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. Its hull was scarred and battle-worn, covered with weapon ports and armor plating. "The flagship is the UHS Vengeance," Admiral Sullivan explained. "She's a dreadnought class vessel. Behind her, we have 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, 18 frigates, and 36 corvettes for fast attack missions." The display showed more ships. 24 support vessels for supplies and repairs. 30 assault ships carrying our Marine Corps for boarding actions and ground combat. Dr. Carter, who had been watching quietly, spoke up. "Ambassador, when humans commit to protecting something, we protect it completely. Your people asked for help against a threat that wants to destroy your entire species. We don't send just enough help. We send everything needed to win." Kethver struggled to understand what he was seeing. The Zephyrians had hoped for 10 ships. The humans were sending a force that could conquer entire star systems. "But why?" he asked. "Why would you risk so much for people you barely know?" Captain Morrison answered. "Because it's the right thing to do. The Vorthik don't just want territory or resources. They want to eliminate your species completely. That's something we can't allow to happen." Admiral Sullivan walked to the display and pointed at the fleet formation. "There is one condition, Ambassador. This will be our operation. We appreciate your ships and your knowledge of the Vorthik, but human forces will lead this mission." "I don't understand," Kethver said. "We've studied your previous battles with the swarm," General Martinez explained. "Your people have been fighting defensively, trying to save as many lives as possible while retreating. That's noble, but it won't stop the Vorthik. What do you propose instead?" Kethver asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Admiral Sullivan's expression grew cold. "We're going to destroy them, not just defeat them or drive them away. We're going to eliminate the Vorthik swarm completely and permanently." The room fell silent. Kethver looked at the humans around the table. Their faces were calm, but their eyes held something that made him uncomfortable. These were not the faces of people planning a defensive action. These were the faces of predators. "You mean to kill them all?" he whispered. "Every ship, every base. Every trace of the swarm, General Martinez confirmed. The Vorthik made the choice to be an extinction-level threat. We're simply making sure they can never threaten anyone again. Dr. Carter saw Kethver's distress. Ambassador, we know this sounds harsh, but the Vorthik don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They consume entire civilizations. The only way to stop them is to stop them permanently. Kethver thought about the dead world he had shown the humans 3 days ago. He thought about the billions of his people who were now just food for the swarm. The humans were right. There was no reasoning with the Vorthik, no peace to be made. When will your fleet arrive? He asked finally. Admiral Sullivan's ships are already moving, Captain Morrison said. They'll reach your home system in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Kethver was amazed. But your ships would have to travel across half the galaxy. Human ships are fast, Admiral Sullivan said with a slight smile. And we don't waste time when people are in danger. She stood up and walked to where Kethver sat. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. When Task Force Retribution arrives in your system, everything changes. We're not coming to help you fight the Vorthik. We're coming to end them. Kethver looked around the room at all the human faces. They were offering him something he had never dared hope for, not just survival for his people, but complete victory over their enemies. I accept your terms, he said quietly. My people will follow human leadership in this war. Admiral Sullivan nodded. Good. We'll need your ships to provide local knowledge and support, but leave the fighting to us. We've been preparing for wars like this longer than your species has had spaceflight. As the meeting ended, Kethver realized that his request for help had unleashed something far beyond what he had imagined. The humans weren't just sending military aid. They were sending Judgment Day for the Vorthak swarm. He only hoped his people were ready for what was coming. 2 weeks later, alarms rang throughout the Zephyrian home system. Every sensor station detected the same impossible reading. 127 ships had just appeared from hyperspace in perfect battle formation. On the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship Crystal Dawn, Fleet Commander Yethron stared at his display screens in amazement. The human fleet stretched across space like a dark wall of metal and weapons. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Zephyrian Navy. By the ancient stars, whispered his sensor officer. Commander, these readings cannot be correct. Some of those ships are larger than our space stations. The largest human ship moved forward from the center of the formation. Its hull was dark gray, covered with scars from old battles. Weapons bristled from every surface, and its size made even the biggest Zephyrian vessel look like a toy. A communication signal reached the Crystal Dawn. The voice that spoke was calm and professional, but carried the authority of someone used to commanding fleets. Zephyrian Command, this is Admiral Kate Sullivan aboard the UHS Vengeance. Task Force Retribution has arrived and is ready to begin operations. Fleet Commander Yethron activated his own communications. Admiral Sullivan, this is Fleet Commander. Yethron, we welcome you to our system. Your fleet is much larger than we expected. We don't do things halfway, Commander. Request permission to establish forward command base on your outer moon. We need to begin preparations immediately. Yethron looked at his officers. They were all staring at their screens, trying to understand the sheer scale of what they were seeing. The human fleet had more ships than the entire Zephyrian Navy, and each human ship carried more weapons than 3 Zephyrian vessels combined. Permission granted, Admiral. We are honored by your presence. Within hours, human ships began landing on the barren moon that orbited the system's edge. Massive transport vessels unloaded equipment, weapons, and personnel. The humans worked with mechanical precision, building a military base faster than the Zephyrians had thought possible. Ambassador Kethver arrived on the moon aboard a Zephyrian shuttle. He was met by Colonel Amy Rodriguez, a human woman in battle armor who commanded the Marine forces. Her soldiers were setting up defensive positions around the base, moving with practiced efficiency. "Ambassador," Colonel Rodriguez greeted him. "Welcome to Forward Base Alpha. Admiral Sullivan is waiting for you in the command center." Kethver followed her through the base. Human soldiers were everywhere, checking weapons, loading supplies, and preparing for war. Their equipment was unlike anything he had seen before. Armor that moved like a second skin, weapons that hummed with energy, vehicles that hovered above the ground. The command center was a large building filled with displays and communication equipment. Admiral Sullivan stood before a massive screen showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. She turned when Kethver entered. "Ambassador, good to see you again. We need to discuss the Vorthik approach patterns." She gestured to the display. "Our long-range sensors have detected the swarm. They're moving toward your outer worlds in 3 separate groups. Approximately 900 ships total." Kethver felt his crystal skin grow cold. 900? That's 3 times larger than any force we've seen before. "They're bringing everything they have," said Captain Nathan Cross, commander of the UHS Vengeance. "They want to finish your people completely." General Vethron, the Zephyrian military commander, arrived with several of his staff officers. The humans gathered around a planning table covered with tactical displays. "General," Admiral Sullivan began, "we've studied your previous battles with the Vorthik. Your tactics have been focused on protecting evacuation ships and minimizing casualties." "Of course," General Vethron replied. "Every life is precious. We cannot simply throw away our people's lives." "We understand that philosophy," Colonel Rodriguez said. "But it's why you've been losing. The Vorthik don't care about their casualties. They'll sacrifice 100 ships to destroy one of yours, because they can always make more." Captain Cross activated a display showing human tactical formations. "We're going to show you a different approach. Instead of defending, we attack. Instead of reacting to their moves, we dictate the battle." The display showed the human fleet divided into 4 groups, each one moving to surround the approaching Vorthik forces. "We let them come to us," Admiral Sullivan explained. "But we choose where and when the battle happens. We concentrate our firepower and destroy their forces piece by piece." General Vethron studied the plan. "This requires putting your ships directly in their path. You'll take heavy losses. Will we?" Captain Cross smiled grimly. "Show him the weapons test, Colonel." Colonel Rodriguez activated another display. It showed a human destroyer firing at an asteroid. The weapons blast completely vaporized the space rock, leaving nothing but glowing particles. "Our weapons are designed to kill efficiently," she explained. "Railguns that fire projectiles at near light speed. Missile systems that can track multiple targets. Energy weapons that can cut through any known armor." Major Carl Bennett, the human intelligence officer, stepped forward with a data pad. "We've analyzed captured Vorthik bioships. Their hulls are strong against conventional weapons, but they have weaknesses." He showed images of Vorthik ship construction. "They're living creatures, essentially. They heal damage over time, but they're vulnerable to specific types of attack. Our weapons are designed to exploit those vulnerabilities." Kethver listened to the humans discuss warfare with casual expertise. They spoke of destroying enemy fleets the way his people might discuss farming or building houses. It was both impressive and frightening. "There's something else you need to understand," Admiral Sullivan said to the Zephyrian officers. "The Vorthik aren't just your enemy now. They're our enemy too." "What do you mean?" General Vethron asked. Major Bennett displayed his analysis of Vorthik bioships. "Every ship in their fleet is made from the processed remains of sentient beings. They don't just kill their enemies. They turn them into weapons." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Lisa Carter, who had arrived with the fleet, spoke quietly. We found organic components from at least 50 different species in their ship samples. The Vorthek have been doing this for centuries. This changes everything, Admiral Sullivan declared. We're not just fighting an enemy. We're destroying an abomination. Every Vorthek ship that exists is a monument to genocide. Colonel Rodriguez checked her equipment. My Marines are ready, Admiral. We've trained for boarding actions against biological ships. We know how to kill these things. Captain Cross looked at the tactical display. Fleet positions are optimal. All ships report ready for combat. We can engage the moment they enter weapons range. Admiral Sullivan turned to the Zephyrian officers. Gentlemen, I want you to understand what you're about to see. Your people have been fighting a defensive war, trying to minimize losses and protect civilians. That's honorable, but it won't win. She pointed to the display showing the approaching Vorthek swarm. We're going to show you what total war looks like. We're going to destroy every Vorthek ship, every Vorthek base, every trace of their existence. General Vethron looked uncomfortable. Admiral, such complete destruction ... is it necessary? General, Captain Cross answered. The Vorthek made themselves into a plague. You don't negotiate with a plague. You don't show mercy to a plague. You eliminate it completely, or it spreads and kills everything it touches. Admiral Sullivan nodded. In 6 hours, the first Vorthek group will reach Zerion Prime. Your outer world has been evacuated, correct? Yes, Kethver confirmed. All civilians have been moved to the inner worlds. Good, because Zerion Prime is where we make our stand. The Vorthek are expecting to find frightened defenders trying to protect evacuation ships. Instead, they're going to find the full might of humanity's war fleet. The Admiral looked around the room at both human and Zephyrian faces. Gentlemen, prepare for battle. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people. As the meeting ended, Kethver realized that his people were about to witness something unprecedented. Humanity unleashed in total war. The Vorthek swarm arrived at Zerion Prime exactly when human intelligence predicted. 300 bioships dropped out of hyperspace in a massive cloud, their living hulls pulsing with alien heartbeats. Each ship was the size of a city block, covered in bone spikes and weapon ports that looked like giant mouths. Swarm leader Krikstal felt satisfaction as his fleet sensors detected the planet ahead. Another world full of soft meat creatures to consume and process. The Zephyrians had provided excellent raw material for ship construction. Their crystalline bones made particularly strong hull plating, but something was wrong. Where were the usual Zephyrian evacuation ships? Where were the desperate defenders trying to buy time for fleeing civilians? Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. A human fleet waited in perfect battle formation around Zerion Prime. On the bridge of the UHS Vengeance, Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the Vorthek ships spread out in their typical attack pattern. Captain Nathan Cross stood beside her, studying the enemy formation on the main display screen. They're confused, Cross observed. Look at their movement patterns. They expected to find scattered defenders, not a coordinated fleet. All ships. This is Admiral Sullivan, she announced over the fleet communication system. The enemy has arrived. Execute Battle Plan Delta. Show them what real warfare looks like. The human fleet moved with mechanical precision. 4 battle groups spread out to surround the Vorthek formation, while the heavy ships formed a solid line of battle in the center. Every movement was calculated and practiced. Fleet Commander Yethron watched from his ship at the edge of the system. The Crystal Dawn and the remaining Zephyrian vessels had been ordered to stay back and observe. The humans wanted no interference with their battle plan. Commander, his sensor officer called out, the Vorthek are launching their biomissiles. Thousands of living projectiles shot out from the swarm ships. Each missile was a creature bred for one purpose: to punch through enemy shields and hull plating. They moved like schools of angry fish through space, adjusting course to track their targets. The Zephyrians had never found an effective defense against these weapons. Their point defense systems could stop some missiles, but never enough. The bio-missiles always got through, but the human ships were different. As the missile swarm approached, every human vessel activated coordinated defense grids. Streams of projectiles and energy beams filled the space between the fleets. The humans didn't just shoot at individual missiles. They created walls of destruction that nothing could pass through. Of the thousands of bio-missiles the Vorthak launched, fewer than 50 survived to reach the human fleet. Those few harmlessly exploded against military shields that had been designed to stop much worse weapons. "Impossible," whispered General Vethron from the Crystal Dawn's bridge. "They stopped them all." Admiral Sullivan's voice cut through the communication channels. "All ships, return fire. Pattern Delta 7. Let's show them how humans fight wars." The human fleet opened fire all at once. Railgun rounds traveling at incredible speeds tore through the Vorthak formation. Each projectile hit with the force of a small nuclear bomb, punching completely through the bioship's living hulls. Missile pods on every human ship launched their weapons. But these weren't simple explosive missiles. They were smart weapons that could think and adapt. When Vorthak bioships tried to use defensive measures, the human missiles simply changed their attack patterns. Energy weapons joined the barrage. Beams of concentrated force sliced through the swarm formation like knives through soft tissue. Where Zephyrian weapons had barely scratched Vorthak hulls, human energy weapons cut the bioships in half. Swarm leader Crystal felt fear for the first time in his long life. His flagship was taking damage from weapons he didn't understand. The humans fought with coordination his species had never encountered. "Launch boarding pods," he ordered. "Get inside their ships. We can overwhelm them in close combat." Hundreds of Vorthak boarding pods shot toward the human fleet. Each pod contained a dozen warriors bred for fighting inside enemy ships. It was a tactic that had never failed against other species. The pods never reached their targets. Human point defense systems, freed from dealing with biomissiles, focused on the larger boarding craft. The pods exploded in brilliant flashes as they died one by one. A few pods managed to latch onto human ships. The Vorthak warriors inside prepared to tear through the hull and slaughter the crew. Instead, they found themselves facing Colonel Amy Rodriguez and her Marines. The human soldiers wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any Vorthak warrior. Their weapons were designed specifically to kill biological enemies. The boarding action turned into a massacre, but not the kind the Vorthak expected. "Boarding pods neutralized," Colonel Rodriguez reported calmly. "All Vorthak eliminated, 0 human casualties." On the main battle line, Captain Cross coordinated the fleet's assault with cold precision. "Hammer Squadron, target the lead bioships. Thunder Squadron, take their flanks. Roll them up from the edges." The human ships moved like dancers in a deadly ballet. Each captain knew exactly where every other ship would be, allowing them to concentrate fire without hitting their own allies. It was coordination born from centuries of human warfare. The Vorthak tried to adapt. They changed formation, altered tactics, sent smaller groups to attack human ships individually. Nothing worked. Every move they made, the humans had already anticipated and countered. "How do they do this?" General Vethron asked in amazement. "Their coordination is perfect. It's like each ship can read the other's minds." Dr. Lisa Carter, monitoring from the Vengeance, answered over the communication channel. "General, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned to work together or die separately. This kind of coordination is natural for us." The battle continued for 2 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human weapons systematically destroyed Vorthak bioships with mechanical efficiency. The swarm's numbers meant nothing against superior technology and tactics. Swarm leader, Crichton realized his fleet was being annihilated. Of his 300 ships, fewer than 50 remained functional. He had never seen such one-sided destruction. "Retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to the secondary rally point." But Admiral Sullivan had anticipated this move too. "Captain Cross, execute Phase 2. Don't let any of them escape." Human pursuit squadrons, positioned precisely for this moment, intercepted the fleeing Vorthik ships. Fast destroyers and corvettes picked off the damaged bioships one by one. The humans showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. The last Vorthik ship died in a brilliant explosion. The space around Zarian Prime was filled with floating debris and the bodies of dead bioships. "All ships, report status," Admiral Sullivan commanded. One by one, human captains reported in. Minor damage to a few vessels, no ships lost. 0 human deaths. Fleet Commander Yethron stared at his display in disbelief. "Admiral Sullivan, your fleet has achieved total victory. The entire Vorthak force has been destroyed." "This was just the beginning, Commander," Admiral Sullivan replied. "Major Bennett, do we have the location of their home base?" Major Carl Bennett checked his intelligence data. "Yes, Admiral. 3 star systems, approximately 40 light-years from here. Our sensors tracked their hyperspace signatures before." "The battle. Excellent. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We're going to pay this swarm a visit at home." Captain Cross looked at the tactical display showing the completely destroyed Vorthak fleet. "Admiral, shouldn't we consolidate our position here? Repair any damage?" Admiral Sullivan's smile was cold as space itself. "Captain, we didn't come here to defend against the Vorthak. We came here to eliminate them completely. Every ship, every base, every trace of their existence." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Sullivan. Phase 1 is complete. We have demonstrated that the Vorthak can be defeated. Now we move to Phase 2, total eradication of the swarm." As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Kethver realized that the battle for Zarian Prime was not the end of the war. It was just the beginning of the Vorthak's final day. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the first Vorthak homeworld, and what they found made even hardened soldiers feel sick. The planet below was a nightmare of living flesh and bone. Massive structures grew from the surface like cancer, pulsing with alien life. Rivers of blood flowed between processing centers where captured beings were turned into ship components. Captain Nathan Cross studied the sensor readings from the UHS Vengeance's bridge. "Admiral, we're detecting thousands of life signs on the surface, but they're all integrated into the Vorthik biostructures." Admiral Kate Sullivan looked at the data with cold eyes. "They're already part of the swarm, Captain. There's no saving them now. Begin planetary bombardment. Sterilization pattern." "Yes, Admiral." "All ships, target the surface installations. Fire when ready." The human fleet opened fire on the Vorthak world with weapons designed to end all life. Massive energy beams carved through the living structures, while kinetic bombardment rounds turned flesh cities into craters of molten rock. The planet's surface became a sea of fire. Dr. Lisa Carter monitored the bombardment from the Vengeances. Science Station. "Admiral, I'm reading some kind of distress signals from the processing centers. There might be survivors down there." "Negative, Doctor," Admiral Sullivan replied firmly. "Sensor analysis shows extensive biological integration. Anyone on that planet has been converted into swarm biomass. We're ending their suffering." Major Carl Bennett checked his intelligence reports. "Admiral, the planetary consciousness is trying to communicate. It's begging for mercy." "The Vorthik never showed mercy to the billions they consumed," Admiral Sullivan said without emotion. "Continue bombardment until the planet is sterile." The attack continued for 6 hours. When it ended, the Vorthik home world was a ball of cooling lava. Nothing lived on its surface. The first nest of the swarm had been completely destroyed. Fleet jumped to the second Vortex system. This world was even worse than the first. The entire planet had been converted into a massive bioship construction facility. Orbital platforms made of living tissue surrounded the world, building new vessels for the swarm from the processed remains of conquered species. "Begin orbital bombardment," Admiral Sullivan commanded. "Destroy everything. Leave nothing intact." The human ships systematically destroyed each orbital platform. The biostructures screamed as they died, their alien voices echoing through space. The planet below tried to launch defensive ships, but human fighters intercepted them all. Colonel Amy Rodriguez led boarding parties onto the larger platforms before they were destroyed. Her Marines moved through corridors made of bone and flesh, planting charges to ensure complete destruction. "This place is a monument to genocide," Rodriguez reported over her radio. "Every wall, every support beam is made from sentient beings. Blow it all." The explosions lit up space as the orbital platforms died. The second Vorthak world followed its sister into molten death. The third and final system contained the swarm's central nest. It was not a planet but a massive space station, constructed from the remains of dozens of consumed worlds. The structure was larger than Earth's moon, containing billions of Vorthak organisms and the collective mind that controlled the entire swarm. "All ships, final assault pattern," Admiral Sullivan announced. "This ends here." The human fleet surrounded the nest station and opened fire with everything they had. The station's defenses were impressive, designed to repel entire fleets. But they had been built to fight conventional enemies, not the focused fury of humanity's war machine. Human weapons tore through the station's living hull. Railgun rounds punched massive holes in the structure, while energy weapons sliced through support beams made of crystallized bone. The station began to break apart under the relentless assault. "Launch boarding parties," Admiral Sullivan ordered. "I want that station searched and cleared before we finish it." Colonel Rodriguez and her Marines stormed into the dying station. Through the holes blown in its hull, they fought through corridors filled with desperate Vorthak defenders, pushing deeper into the structure's heart. "Admiral, we found it," Rodriguez reported from deep inside the station. "The central consciousness chamber. It's huge." The Marines entered a vast room filled with a pulsing organic computer made from the processed minds of 1,000 different species. The collective consciousness of the Vorthak swarm writhed in its biomechanical housing, begging for mercy in the voices of all the beings it had consumed. "Burn it," Rodriguez ordered her troops. "Every last piece." The Marines used incendiary weapons designed to destroy biological matter. The central consciousness screamed with the voices of every species the Vorthak had destroyed as it burned. Then there was silence. "Central consciousness destroyed," Rodriguez reported. "All Vorthak resistance has ceased." Admiral Sullivan nodded grimly. "All ships, finish the station." Total destruction. The human fleet concentrated its fire on the massive nest. The structure, now without its guiding intelligence, simply collapsed under the bombardment. Pieces the size of cities broke away and drifted into space. When the firing stopped, nothing remained of the Vorthak swarm but floating debris and memories of horror. Months later, Admiral Sullivan stood in the conference room of the human orbital station where this had all begun. Ambassador Kethver sat across from her, his crystal skin dim with exhaustion and relief. "It's over," Kethver said quietly. "The Vorthak swarm no longer exists. You did what you promised. You destroyed them. Completely. Every ship, every base, every trace," Admiral Sullivan confirmed. "The threat is permanently eliminated." The conversation was interrupted by signals from across the galaxy. Word of humanity's actions had spread to every known species. Some messages offered friendship and alliance, grateful for the elimination of the swarm. Others expressed fear about humanity's military power and willingness to use it. What will your people do now? Kefver asked. Admiral Sullivan looked out at the stars through the station's viewing port. We'll go home, but we'll be watching. The galaxy has many peaceful species like yours, and apparently many threats like the Vorthok. Someone needs to be ready to deal with those threats. And if other species see humanity as a threat? Admiral Sullivan's smile was as cold as the space between stars. Then they'd better make sure they never become one. We've shown what happens to species that threaten innocent people. The human fleet began its journey back to Earth, leaving behind a galaxy that had learned a valuable lesson. When peaceful beings asked humanity for help, they received everything the human race could provide. When hostile forces threatened extinction, they received something else entirely. Perfect, absolute justice delivered with overwhelming force. The Zephyrian Confederation was safe. The Vorthok swarm was extinct. And across the galaxy, every species now knew that somewhere in the darkness, humanity's war fleets patrolled the stars, ready to respond to any threat with the full fury of Earth's children. In the end, the aliens had begged for help against an enemy that wanted to destroy them. What they got was something far more than they had dared to hope for, a human war armada that didn't just defend them, but eliminated their enemies so completely that the threat could never return. The galaxy was a safer place, protected by the knowledge that humanity stood guard against the darkness.